Anecdotes for success. Level up with truth, meaning, trade-offs, perspective.
All right, Matt, we have a great guest on today. Jeremy Slate, welcome to Anecdotes for Success.
Hey guys, I'm stoked to be here hanging out with you, and I hope I can offer some value to your audience today.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Jeremy, sorry, Paul, we were just talking about how you're a failed teacher, and then we interrupted you because we didn't want to hear the story, without hitting record as we're chit-chatting a little bit. So, I know you're going to tell us a lot, but I did want to hear what you had to say about that.
So I have my master's degree in ancient history. I wrote my thesis, which I actually published into a book, on how the Roman emperor convinced people he was God. So I was into some really deep stuff in the history world, man. But it doesn't.
What's the name of the book?
Once again, don't let a person that thinks they're smart title a book. It's just not a good idea, because I named it. First of all, it was in Latin. It was Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus and the Apotheosis of Augustus, which means the process of becoming a god that Pompey the Great applied, that Augustus applied from Pompey the Great. So it's don't do your titles all in Latin. Don't name your book in Latin. It's pretentious, and it makes other people think you want to think you're smart.
Lesson learned, right?
Exactly, man. I've learned a lot since that time period in my life.
That's really neat. What a cool story. That's awesome. I would like to read it, though. I'm an avid reader, so I'd love to read it.
Well, I was reading this article one time, and it was so it was in the year 43 BC, when the kind of the last battle before the Roman Republic becomes the Roman Empire is Caesar, who at that point in time is named Octavian, against Mark Antony, right? So Caesar, Augustus Caesar, who becomes who's Octavian at that point in time, beats Antony, and then he does this really weird thing, because at that point in time, the body of Alexander the Great is mummified and is on display in Alexandria, Egypt. And he goes and he kneels before the body of Alexander and starts praying. And I was like, that's really weird. I've never read that anywhere before. So then I looked at everything that Augustus did in his life, and I realized he looked at everything Alexander did and copied it, because they're like, oh, if they're worshiping this guy, they'll worship me. Let me do everything he did.
Okay, I'm a history amateur, I would say, but I love it. I find it fascinating. I think there's so much to learn from it, of course. So, but anyway, again, welcome.
Yeah.
I'm glad to have you here.
Yeah, same, man.
Got us off a little bit off track, but I wanted to hear that.
But before you begin, just that story you told, that's the whole point of history is telling stories and keeping your audience interested. So I can't even imagine why you would have been a failed teacher. It's blowing my mind right now. So go ahead.
Well, so you'll get this, though, because so first of all, I taught in private school, which you don't need a degree in New Jersey to teach in a private school. They just put you in a room with 40 kids and they say good luck. So I had no formal classroom management training. And I started every lesson for 2 years with, all right, so let's open up that PowerPoint. And I read them the PowerPoint for an hour for 9 periods a day. You could see how I wasn't that fun as a teacher, man. I wasn't the engaging person then that I am now. And it's interesting, though, because I find that, and you've probably seen this throughout your career, that the more I actually focused on what I enjoyed, which is being a student, and that's what I've done through the podcast, I find that I've actually taught people better now than I did then, right? Because I was approaching it as I am the expert, I know everything, and you need to listen to me and blah, blah, blah. But when you approach it as, I'm growing, I'm learning, and we're kind of learning this together, people get a lot more out of it. And that was something I learned after the fact, but, kind of not going through that whole experience.
That's crazy. So if you went back now, it's another life ago, you'd kill it, man. You'd be incredible.
Now I would, yeah. But it's, as I said, I'm not the person then that I was now. It's just all right, so here's my 140 slide PowerPoint. Let's go.
You just said something which I love, and I know Matt probably would touch on it if I didn't. You're not the person now that you were then. Shouldn't everybody feel that same way? We feel too many people don't feel that way.
I think that's really vital, and that's one of the biggest things that I've seen in some of the highest performers in the world, right? If you want to be extraordinary, we all start as something unremarkable. We all start as something that, maybe somebody some people have a little less, some have a little more, but essentially we start in a pretty even playing field for the most part with ability level. And it's the ones that every single day can find that level of improvement. in themselves that are going to see a big improvement. Like I was actually really excited yesterday to see that Tom Brady said he's going to be playing again. I'm not a Bucs fan. I'm not a Patriots fan, but I've always really admired him for one reason. Like I see every single person in your life, you're going to have what's called a Mo Lewis moment. And if you remember who Mo Lewis was, he was a linebacker for the Jets, tackles Drew Bledsoe, nearly kills him too, by the way. And Drew Bledsoe gets knocked out of the game, and a little known guy that was a 6th-round pick named Tom Brady comes in that game and never lets go of the role, because every single day he was preparing, every single day he was improving, every single day he was getting a little bit better. He didn't have a big arm, he didn't have fast legs, but he was always working to be better. And I think if we can take that home, man, that's where all the improvement is in our life.
Well, Jeremy, you just talked about Brady, and it's funny. I have similar feelings. I never rooted for him. Always rooted against him.
Oh yeah, same here.
Up and kind of to the last few years, and then I thought, this guy is the perfect example of how you go from where we start from to greatness. And and I'm, this is your area of expertise and why we wanted you on here and why we're looking forward to talking to you. But Paul and I have been talking about Tom Brady since day one of our podcast. And this is a reason, for the same reason. It's a process, right? It's every day. Everyone looks at, the success of whoever they want to look at, and they think it was a lottery ticket that you scratched off, right? It was like a moment. It's never a moment. It is day in and day out, discipline, doing the hard things, not taking the shortcuts, having a plan, following through, making mistakes, getting back up, and keep on going. And Brady, and we vowed never to talk about Brady anymore because Paul's wife kept criticizing us. But I'm glad you brought him up, because it's perfect. And for someone with the story you have to tell and the things you're going to talk about, I'm glad to hear the way you started with it, because that's what it is. There's no, I don't think there's a lot of secrets. I think it's just, are you disciplined enough?
Well, can I add something to that too, Matt? Because I think that's something really important perspective, right? So this last Super Bowl, we had the Rams and we had the Bengals, right? Do you know that was the first Super Bowl ever where you had 2 number 1 overall pick quarterbacks against each other? To me, that was the first time that's ever happened.
Wow.
And I'd be really curious to see, how many of these really, really great, college quarterbacks that get to the pros and get the big money, how many of them are winners? And I'd really like to see that lined up, because I think it's the guys that have had to, you look at somebody like Peyton Manning, he's won a few Super Bowls and that's great. But, he had the big arm. He's always worked with talented receivers. And, Brady has in the last couple of years, but the first 5-10 years of his career, can you name anybody else he threw the ball to rather than like Deion Branch or somebody like that? So it's somebody that makes other people better. And I think that's what it really says. And that's why you look at somebody like, I don't know why this has become a sports conversation, but it makes sense for real life. But you look at somebody like LeBron James versus Michael Jordan. LeBron James, in order to win, you have to keep getting him things. You look at Michael Jordan, he made the people around him better. And I think that's what somebody that is looking at growth, somebody that wants to be the best, they're looking at, okay, so how can I make the people around me better so that we can win together, rather than somebody says like, all right, get me I need a 7-foot center. I need a better power forward. Like, if you can win, it's because you're making others around you better, not that you constantly need things.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that ability to make people better is under talked about a lot less than it should be.
Yeah.
What does that look like in real life to you? I mean, forget, sports, but what's it look like to the average people like ourselves?
So here's one thing I'll mention. There's in what my company does, Command Your Brand, there's a few different competitor agencies, right? One by name is a company called Interview Valet. The owner of Interview Valet and myself are actually really good friends. And we tend to focus on different types of clients. And if we get somebody that comes to us that isn't a great client for us, but I know they're a great client for Tom, I connect them to Tom because I know he'll take care of them. And I think that's what it looks like, is knowing what you're best at and knowing what other people are best at and how you can flow power to other people. It's the same thing with when you're hiring, right? The awesome woman we have now that runs our treasury in our company, we hired her originally for like email outreach, which she was really good at. But I looked at it and like, we're really not using all her skills. Like, she's extremely qualified. Like, she could run this whole darn company. And, you know, when we looked at it and we saw what her skill set was, we put her in a better position to win. So I think it's being able to, number one, you know, I love competition. I love winning, but at the same time, you need to recognize what your lane is. But the other thing is, like, how can you make the other people around you better by recognizing their skill sets?
Yeah, I'll let you talk here, Paul. I know you want to say something. Jeremy, you know, going back to our sports analogies as well. I mean, and I think it's apropos. You know, the great coaches put people in position to win, right? They don't just come in with a system and say, this is my system. You know, we're running a 3-4 defense, da 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 da. They look at who do I have on the team? What are their skill sets, and how can I place them in a position to win? And you know, in business or life, you know, whether it's your employees, whether it's your family members, or whatever it might be, putting people in a position to succeed, I think it's, again, underserved, under-discussed. It's like, I need someone to be my database person, or I need someone to be a financial person, or a marketer, or a salesperson, or whatever. That's what I'm hiring for, this person for. That's what you're doing, as opposed to, what are you good at? What do you like? And how do I shape the organization to fit you and your skill sets more than, you know, putting a square peg in a round hole, or whatever it might be. So Paul, go ahead. I know you're going to say something.
I feel like this is going to start sounding like a Patriots fan show too, because that was actually it's the Belichick Scott Pioli strategy, right? Like, that's what they did. They draft all these guys. You're like, who is that guy? And the next thing you'd be like, who is that guy? You know what I mean? Like, that, it was kind of like they would find these guys at some Division II school that nobody ever heard of, and, you know, they'd put them in a different position. They'd you know, do whatever. Maybe, like, I think Troy Brown, they put him at cornerback and he was like really good at it. But it's like finding people, and it's the same thing goes for the business world. You find people and you find their skill set. Sorry, Paul, I don't want to cut you off, man.
I love all this sports talk. I mean, I'm a coach, but this is where I think some people are so close and then don't get it. Everybody in America loves a good sport and loves a good sports analogy, right? And
oh yeah.
They love these stories, but I think they get lost in the process of, all right, they get too wrapped up in wins and losses, because even because of the Tom Brady's or the Michael Jordans or the Steph Curry's or whoever, regardless of what everybody's win-losses are, every other team in the league gets better because their team got better, right? It lifts everybody up. And you mentioned it with your competitor / friend, Tom, I think you said his name.
Yeah, Tom,
was. Yeah, like, yeah, you're competitors in certain ways, but you get better when he gets better, right?
Correct.
And I think people forget about that with sports. They feel like it's a zero-sum game, and it's not. I mean, records are records, but the overall talent in the league is going to grow when one of these great peoples or great coaches come along. And I think we forget that in the business world.
No, I think that's huge, right? Like, it's here's another NFL analogy, right? You look at, you know, 10 years ago, to pass for 4,000 yards was a big deal. Now, passing for 5,000, almost 6,000 yards is kind of where it's at, and people run the ball less. It's you know, a rising tide lifts all boats, and that's what's kind of happened as they focused on, you know, making offenses better. You're finding players get better. And here's the interesting thing: their compensation gets better then, because they're producing better. So and that's the same thing in your company, right? And that's, we're big on rewarding people whose statistics are up. So we have production-based bonuses. And I think that's what's really important as well, is if you're rewarding your people for not just a job well done, but a job well done that exceeds expectations. And when you really reward that, you're going to get more of that. And I think that's what we need to be looking at in our organizations.
Yeah, so do I. I think there's far too much. There's not enough of that, of you're getting rewarded for, you know, my philosophy in business is, whichever business of mine we're referring to, we're there to provide value for the customer, period. And that equals production, which is what you were talking about, Jeremy. Look, I want people to show up, and I want them to be reliable, and I want them to be there. But, you know, there's more to it than that. I want production. And that's how I get paid. I don't have a job. I don't get a paycheck. I get paid based on my production. And I think that's the most wonderful thing in the world. I love the fact that that's how it works. And maybe I can do it, and maybe I can do it in 10 hours this week to make what I'd like to make, or maybe it's going to take me 50. I don't know, but I get paid based on my production, and I love paying people based on production.
Yeah.
Because the bigger check I write, the better everyone had done. And I tell anyone who will listen that one of the things that I want you to do as a young person, I want you to get into a job. If you're going to take on a job, I'd like you to get into something where it's somewhat production focused, because I think that's a healthy way to have to live at some point, because it'll put you in the right mindset to focus on things that matter to your customers, or to whatever the numbers are, or whatever the quantitative items we're looking for are that equal production. And I don't think people get scared of that, right? They want the guarantee.
Well, because you look at it, and your only real security is in yourself and your own ability to produce. And a lot of people look at it and are like, all right, well, I want you to pay me X number of dollars because then I have security. Well, here's the thing, like, what if the economy changes? What if that company changes? What if minimum wages going up can actually drive down other wages because there's less money to pay people. So the thing you have to think about is your only security is in yourself and your own ability. And if you can find a job where you can actually get rewarded more for the amount you produce, you can give yourself a raise, like, dude, that's the way to go about it.
This is excellent. So a lot of our viewers are, well, it could be any age, but a large majority of them are people in their 20s. They've been sold a plan all their life, and they're going to succeed and have this job 9 to 5. And then they find out it's not as satisfying as it was, right? There's nothing fueling their fire. And that's why I was excited to bring you on, because that's you. I mean, we can already tell in the first couple minutes your excitement, but what advice, like, how do you go about igniting your passion? I mean, from just being that passive observing 9 to 5 guy to being the creator of your own life.
Well, I think it's first and foremost realizing that a lot of us are sold a lie. We're sold the lie, and once again, I don't want to slam education because I feel like it's really important. But I think at the same time, we're sold the idea of, go to college and get the degree and you'll come out and you'll get a job, which isn't necessarily true. You have to look at, does my skill set align with a college education? Because, hey, if you're going to be a doctor, be a lawyer, be whatever, you should go to college. It's not a good idea to not. In fact, they won't license you if you don't. But there's certain like really great trades. Like I know some plumbers that make bank and they're really good at it. I know a 7-figure plumber. The dude does very well. So you need to take a look at, your skill set and how does it align with the actual job or career you want to go into. I think too many times we go into college with this ambiguous idea. So I think that's the first thing you have to take a look at is what does my skill set and what I enjoy align with how I can make money? Because I think too often, as I mentioned, I'm a history major. I love history, but would I recommend anybody else go to school for a degree in history unless you knew what the end route was? No, because it's not a useful skill. Like the knowledge is great, but I can get the knowledge outside of school. So you want to look at what is the useful skill I can get from there. Some business degrees could be great. Some experiential degrees could be great, but a lot of things, like your different liberal arts degrees and stuff like that just aren't as useful. So I think the first thing is realizing, what is my ability going to align with what I'm going to school for? And the other thing is, how can I then improve at that every day? There's a really big thing I think is missing in societies nowadays. And that's the thing of apprenticeships. You still see it in some of the trades, but you see it a lot less in other areas where you would work under somebody that was really good at something for a period of time. And you would decide it would serve two purposes. Number one, to get you some skills in that area. Number two, as the ability to decide, do I want to be in this career? So I think that's really important too. And I think that should go right between high school and college, because then you could decide, okay, does this fit with a college career? Does this fit with a trade career? And at the same time, that college career you're spending money on is going to be a lot more valuable because it's actually directed towards where you want to be. And so to me, that's my whole philosophy on it.
Funny you say that, because the unique class I was telling you about, I recruit kids as juniors. They come in as seniors, and every Tuesday they go out on, we call them rotations or shadow experiences, where they try to explore what they want to do. And these are all honors students, and they're starting to question, why do I go to a 4-year school now when I'm enjoying this internship? Maybe I should go to community college and work, or maybe I should just save some money, invest, and then figure out when I'm 21 what I want to do. Like, I don't understand, like you just said, why the ages of 18 to 22 determine what you're going to do the rest of your life. It's a lot.
So hard. Like I had no idea what I wanted to do at 18 years old. Like you know what I mean? Like to know what I know in my mid to late 30s now, dude, like life is very different. And I think to put that much stress on a decision you make at 18 is crazy to me. Like there should be more experience between that time and you decide like, is college right for me? Is it wrong for me? Should I go to vocational school? Like what's going to be the right way to go about this?
Well, you could fit right in our podcast because you know how you talk and your philosophies, because they're very much aligned with what Paul and I talk about often, and we use the same terminology, or at least I do. I won't put words in Paul's mouth. At least I do sometimes, just not right now. We're selling them a whole thing of lies. It doesn't have to be like this. And then, you know, it's Jeremy, I don't know about you, but I would say that this is probably a low percentage. 90% of adults I know do not like what they do. They do not. When all I hear about, when I ask people about their jobs, all they can talk about is when the weekend's coming and when their vacation is. You are not in what we call pillar number 2, meaning. Pillar number
exactly.
2, that's not meaning. You know,
half the time I don't know what day of the week it is, because like sometimes my work falls on a weekend, sometimes my family falls during the week. You know, kind of it is what it is.
We're in the same room, because I'm always saying the thing. You know, when I know I'm in the zone, you know, when I know I have a meeting, when it's Friday night at 9:00 and my wife and I are sitting at our island going over a new plan on this thing we're looking to build, and we're going, what time is it? Oh my. That's meaning. That matters. That's living, and that's working, and that's caring. Not, oh my God, it's only Wednesday. I can't wait. Oh gosh, is there a holiday coming up? And that's what 90%, again, I think it's higher, of people talk about. And that's sad to me. That it doesn't have to be that way, but we're forcing people down through this system. And I know you said you don't want to criticize education anymore, and
I just think the way it's set up right now, Matt, like doesn't serve people, right? I think the idea is important. Like we need knowledge, man, or we're gonna make the same mistakes, and people have figured out how to do things better. And I think that part of it is important, but how it's set up also isn't. Like I think the frankly the funding structure should be looked at as well. Like too many kids come out of college and they got a mortgage without the house. So how are they going to spend years experimenting and figuring out what they want to do when they've got this like large payment over their head? But at the same time, like you have responsibility because you agreed to it. Do you get what I'm saying? So it's a really 100%. Weird situation to be in.
It's a tough dichotomy. Yep.
Yeah. So
sorry to interrupt, but I get passionate, as Paul knows, about this. But you said the knowledge is important. Of course, our pillar number 1 is truth. Truth is about knowledge. Truth is about understanding what is actually happening, what is real, and making no apologies for it, not being an ideologue in any way, not thinking, well, I'm a part of this group or that group, so I have to think like this. That's not seeking the truth.
No.
So we're big believers in knowledge and truth, but the system is broken, and it's leaving a lot of broken people in its path.
Well, yeah, and at the same time, like a lot of the people I talk to that are high achievers, they're like they have some traditional education, but self-education is a really big part of what they do, right? They're very motivated on, okay, so I need more knowledge about that. Who has that knowledge and how can I get it? You're like, who's the best at that? Or, you know, like, how can I like cut the learning curve for myself? And that's one of the biggest things I see. Like, you know, to go back to Peyton Manning, we talked about earlier, when he lived in Denver, he had a film room built in his house so he could watch more film than they would let him watch at the stadium, because he wanted to be able to do what he was, you know, see things before they happen. Luke Kuechly, he used to play linebacker for Carolina. His first 2 years in the NFL, he didn't have cable because he wanted to watch film at the house. And one of the things that they always talked about Luke Kuechly is he could see how the offensive linemen were like moving before the play happened, where he knew where everything was going. Like, so like when you can become that good at what you do, you know, it can be incredible for you and what you can create because you're that good at what you do.
And Jeremy, that's just work. That's not being born 6'5", 220 pounds with a rocket arm, or 6'2", 270 and being able to run a 4.6 40, right? That's just going to work. That's just putting yourself in a position to succeed. You don't have to look at a superstar athlete and say, you know, I'm 5'11", 180, you know what I mean? And I run probably a 5'3", 40. You know, like I don't have the physical gifts of those guys. I never will. I don't need to in order to succeed.
Correct.
I can build the film room. I can spend, I say, I have this conversation a lot. I'm 46 years old, but my work life, I'm probably 66 because I never worked a 40-hour week in my life, Jeremy. I work 60 hours a week. If you work 60 hours a week and not 40, guess what? You're 50% ahead of everybody. And it becomes exponential over and over. So, of course, you're going to be able to put yourself in a better position. You want to work 30 hours a week? Good for you. Just be willing to accept pillar number 3, right, Paul? Trade-offs. And it goes the other way. You can outwork people in this life, and you don't have to be the smartest. You don't have to be the most talented, but you can get in the film room for a good analogy and outwork people all day long.
Well, you know what's interesting, Matt, is like I love that you're in franchising, first of all, because like if you look at the way we're told you make money, we're told you work X number of hours, it's 40 a week. This is how much you're going to make a year. This is whatever it is. But for a lot of people, and there's different levels of like financial commitment. And I know some franchises, the franchise fee is a lot larger, some it's smaller. But for a lot of regular people, there's actually a door open to make money, starting with a franchise and, buying more locations and buying more locations. We're not told there's other ways to make money. We're told that you find somebody, they give you a job, and be thankful you have it. And now, maybe you'll get your 2 weeks vacation after you're there for 5 years. And I think there needs to be more education around different ways to make money, but it's not covered in school.
Well, you nailed it, Paul. I'll let you talk here.
Yeah, no, so
Go ahead, Paul.
I'm trying to find a perfect segue here, and this is it. So we're talking about work. Jeremy, when you were done with college, you went to a private school. Someone gave you a job teaching.
Yep. I actually begged for it, by the way.
Okay, so begged for it. And so how did you become Jeremy Slate, the founder of Command Your Brand, and have the wonderful podcast history you have? I mean, obviously you put some work in, but what made you, so when you left or decided to stop teaching, I mean, connect the dots for us here.
Well, so actually, like when I came out of school in 2011, I was a bad economy, which is funny because you look at it now and our dollar is actually worth 25% less of what it was worth in 2011. But that's neither here nor there. And I couldn't find a job right out of school, right? You have a master's degree, so you're overqualified for anything and underqualified for anything else. So I actually, during the day, I worked with a house painter. We did everything by hand, like hand scraping, hand painting. We did these old Victorian homes. I'd work there from 7 a.m. until 5 every day. I'd run home, take a shower quick, eat some food, and then I was the nighttime manager at the gym from 6 to 11. So that was the work ethic I had when I ran into a friend of the family. It's like, hey, the private school that I used to be the principal at's looking for teachers. You don't need any experience. I'm like, hey, that's the job for me. So I ended up teaching there for 2 years. And this was like right around the time when like smartphones were becoming like more prevalent. And because like people barely had flip phones when I was in school, if they had a phone at all. And their goal was to see how angry they could get me and then get me on YouTube. That was every single day of my life while doing these PowerPoints. So like, I just was miserable, man. And then in 2012, my mom ended up having a really bad stroke, and it made me kind of look at everything I'm doing in my life. I'm like, do I want to be miserable every day, getting up at 4:30 because where I work's an hour away, and doing this every single day for the next 40 years? And when I looked at it, I'm like, no, I don't. Do I know what I'm going to do next? No. So I actually ended up teaching, I ended up doing network marketing right out of there, which I didn't know what it was. I thought somebody was giving me a job. So I'm like, all right, just find 2 friends and get 2 friends. I'm gonna be like a millionaire next week. It didn't work like that. But it taught me a lot of those hard skills I didn't have. And I think for a lot of people that, if you don't know what you want to do, or you have an academic background, you don't have any experience, network marketing is great for a lot of people because you're going to learn how to make phone calls. You're going to learn how to hold meetings. You're going to learn how to try and sell things. And I went from there to then selling life insurance, which the single greatest skill I ever learned was how to make 100 phone calls a day. And when you can do that, rejection doesn't hurt anymore. But I was good at it too. I made some darn good money, but I just hated those conversations of like talking about death and dying and where you're leaving your family. It's like, I wasn't physically feeling good about that. So my final straw in the entrepreneurship world was buying products from China and selling them on Amazon. And one of the things you do when you start your business is you give away products for $1 so that you get your sales volume up, you rank on Amazon, and you sell more products. Well, there's a little checkbox that they automatically by default check, and it says to leave your $1 promo code on your listing. Somebody else realized I made this mistake and they bought all of my products in like 20 minutes and I was out of business. So that was kind of the end of my business career. So I had been listening to podcasts since, like 2007. I actually got really excited. I'm a big fan of a podcast called The No Agenda Show. It was the first podcast I listened to. It's hosted by Adam Curry, who used to be on MTV in the 80s. I'm actually going to be interviewing Adam in the next couple of weeks. I'm pretty excited about that. But that was the first podcast that I listened to. And I'd always wanted to do it, but I always told myself like the timing wasn't right, whatever it may be. So in 2014, I started a podcast called Rock Your Life. It was terrible. And I quit that in about 60 to 90 days, somewhere around that. And that was in 2014. 2015, I started Create Your Own Life. And we saw 10,000 listens in our first month. I connected with a lot of people I was really excited to meet, and people started asking for help. And that's where our company Command Your Brand came from.
That's an amazing story. I mean, what first question is, you went from a failed podcast to the new one, and then you had 10,000 like that. How, why, what happened?
So I had no social following or anything like that. And as I mentioned, I think failing the first time around was really important because I had seen like what didn't work. So I went out and got more education. I bought a couple courses and things like that, which was great. So I really understood more about being a host, more about the technology, more about the doingness of it, which is important. So that was one part of it. But then at the same time, I realized like the estimation of effort it was going to take. And this goes back to, making phone calls. This goes back to holding meetings. A lot of people think that you do something once and, somebody says no to you or something happens or whatever it may be. And that's the end of it. People that get it realize it's 100 times, it's 500 times, it's 1,000 times to see success. So the difference was this time is I sat down and I sent individual messages to people on LinkedIn asking them to subscribe to my podcast. I sent like 3,000 by hand. It took many, many hours. The other part was I had built a small email list through each of these businesses I had tried and failed at. So I reached out to all those people individually, about 750 people. Then I also reached out to every single person on my phone with a text message with a link to my podcast to subscribe, as well as I got to the point where I was in public. I was grabbing people's phones that were friends with me and showing them how to subscribe to my show, because I knew the major thing that moves shows forward and ranks them in Apple Podcasts is number of subscribers you can get in a 24-hour period. So because of that, I was able to hit new and noteworthy, which meant I got 8 weeks of free promotion. And that really helped to, kind of crank things up. But I knew what was important. I knew what didn't work before. And I knew it was the amount of effort I could take to get myself in front of people. And, I had no social following. I had no real connections, but I was willing to outwork anybody.
Well, that's great. In fact, you just said it. You're willing to put in the work and outwork anyone. What I'm curious about is, what was the value you were offering or claiming to offer these people when you're reaching out on LinkedIn or stopping them in the grocery store? Were you giving them a pitch of some sort, or you just say, help me out, or what were you doing?
But it was from the viewpoint of like, I've always felt that society sold me a lie. And I've learned this through experience, and I really want to help empower other people to create a life on their own terms. And because of that, I've started the Create Your Own Life show, where I'm learning from people that are really great at what they do, so I can share that knowledge with others. And a lot of people bought into that idea. And I think that's really important too, is people need to be able to buy into the idea that you're selling. And I think that was really, really important. And the ask was really easy, subscribe to my show and review it. If you don't want to, sorry if I bothered you with this email, just don't mark it as spam so other people see it.
Now, how does the Create Your Own Life podcast fit into Command Your Own Brand?
So we started getting a lot of attention really fast. And what happened was we had one of my friends, he was one of the top podiatrists in the country. And he said, hey, I'd like to start a podcast. So we started a company called Slate Media Productions, which I was like chief cook and bottle washer. I did everything. And I didn't know how to do a proposal. So my original proposal was, all right, this is going to cost you $20,000 a month. He's like, great, I'll pay you $1,000. I'm like, I'm in. So like, number one, I wasn't making any money, but it was kind of this first thing to get me started. And we created a great podcast for him. But one of the things we did in launching his show is we got him on other podcasts to get attention. And that really, really did well. And he was like, I'm really enjoying the podcast, but at the same time, I'm busy. I have an office. I have all these employees. I'm trying to make it run. I just want to go on podcasts. And we ended up focusing on that and getting a lot of other people asking for that. And that's really where the company came from. And since then, we have a team of 15 here, and we've booked thousands of podcasts in the last few years, and we're just trying to keep doing a better job of what we're doing every day.
So the company, the idea behind the company is to get other people exposure through other podcasts, if you will.
Yeah, and we do a lot of media training around it as well, because like how you're talking about things, how you're discussing things, how you're connecting people is so important. Just getting connected with people is great, but at the same time, you need to be able to like really add a ton of value. So that's a big part of what we're doing as well.
Super interesting. That is. Sorry, Paul. Looked like you're going to say something.
No, listen. I'm smart enough. I talk all day as a teacher. I'm taking notes, and I've got
hopefully not with 100. Hopefully with not without a PowerPoint that's got 150 slides there, Paul.
No PowerPoints, and when I make the students do PowerPoints, I don't let them use words. They can only use pictures.
Oh my God. Do you remember? So I used to have this teacher my sophomore year of high school. It was my personal finance class, and she had one of those like old projectors where you put the clear thing on top of it and she'd be writing on it. Like, oh my God, that takes me back.
So I joke about that it's like I'm the only one that had the answers, and I'm going to black out everything else and just pull that piece of paper down one line at a time. Or I'm going to take out random words and have a blank there. So you have to listen to fill in those blanks. I found once technology hit, it was better. I just give we don't really even do that in my class, but if I give notes, I just give them all the notes, and then we get on with the stories and the experiences and the learning, because like we're not gatekeepers of information, right?
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead, Matt.
Jeremy, my question is, the people who mostly with the Command Your Own brand, what are they trying to accomplish? What are your clients trying to accomplish? Is it attention? Is it strictly podcast type stuff? I mean, what's the goal for your customers?
So they're really trying to become more of that authority in their space, right? They already have a business that's successful. It's already making money. It's already growing, but at the same time, they really want to become, known, liked, and trusted. And I think that's really the biggest thing, because the thing I look at is it's essentially any business is public relations, marketing, and sales, right? If your sales aren't working, something's wrong with your marketing. If your marketing's not converting, something's wrong with your public relations. So, you need to be able to have that piece there so that everything else you're doing works better. And I really look at podcasts as the direction media is going. There's a really great ability to connect with people, to have conversations and create trust like never before. So to me, appearing as a guest on a podcast or even having your own should be a key part of your public relations strategy, so that your marketing works better, so you're creating pieces to market and to really ensure everything else you're doing.
Interesting. And what kind of numbers are you dealing with in terms of the number of customers you not necessarily even have? I'm not trying to get anything, that you don't want to talk about, but how much demand is there for, obviously the podcast world's blowing up, there's I don't know what the numbers are, but I want to say in the millions.
3.5 million.
3.5?
3.5, yeah. There was, when I started in 2014, there were like 240,000.
Wow. So that's over, what's that, almost 15 times growth or something like that. What percentage of those are actually decent or whatever, God only knows. But
so according to Edison research, 95% of all podcasts have 100 downloads or less. So if you have more than 100 downloads an episode, you're in the top 5% of podcasts.
Paul, we're getting there. We're getting there. And with that said, I'm sure there's just a constant influx of people in and out.
Oh, they're in and out. And it's like 8. So the other number there is as well is only 18% of podcasts are like producing a show every 2 weeks. So that means that you got 3.5 million, but only 18% of those are really to be considered active. So like at the same time, you produce a little bit more than the other 82%. You're still doing pretty well for yourself.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what where's the with so much competition and so much going on in that field, and as you pointed out, many people clearly aren't committed or committed enough to make an impact.
Yeah.
where's the future? How are people succeeding in what, I think is just really still the beginning of a marketplace.
Yeah, like I would agree. It's still a very like nascent industry. There's still kind of a lot of growth there, but at the same time, I think there's a couple different perspectives to take a look at it as. I think too many people consider the podcast to be a business itself, when really your podcast should be something that supports whatever else you're doing, supporting your mission, supporting your business. Like, I think too many people look at it as, and they're, we're going to get the traffic up and then we're going to Joe Rogan this thing and sell ads. And that's just really for less than 1/2 of people. Sure. That's how it's going to be. But for most people, your podcast is something that creates that know, like, and trust factor. It connects you with other people that are important in your sphere. And it supports whatever else you're doing, right? It brings more interest into your business. It brings more trust in your business. It brings more connections into your business. I've only pitched for a speaking gig a few times because I get a lot of speaking gig requests through podcasts. So to me, I think that's kind of where we're going, is we're going in a direction where, you have more control over media because you have become media. But you have to realize it's part of what you're doing. It's not the thing that you just get it, pump it up, and sell ads, because there's way more value on it than most people are ever going to have.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's super interesting, because I think that's the dream most people have. I'm going to be Joe Rogan someday.
Yeah.
And that wasn't even his dream when he started it.
No, and it reminds me, there's a South Park episode back in the day. This had to be like 05, 06. This really is going to show my age here. But like this was back when like YouTube like first kind of started becoming a thing. And like they had this idea that like there was this thing called magical internet money. And you just got a video on YouTube and then people would watch it and you got the magical internet money. People had the same idea with podcasting. Like, I'm just going to put it out there. I'm going to grab 3 friends. We're going to like, kind of just jabber about anything. And then people are going to download and we're going to make a whole bunch of money. It needs to be, you need to be in this for 6 months to a year minimum, right? You need to commit to it. You need to commit to what's your value proposition for the people listening to you. You need to commit to, really just being in this for the long haul. And I think too many people, they do 20 episodes. It doesn't go where they want. It hasn't changed their business. So they quit. And you have to realize, for me, like I was 2 years into this, still finding my voice. I was 5 years into this and I changed my voice because I found out who I really was. And I think that's what you really have to look at, is you have to constantly be growing, constantly be willing to kind of up the ante of what you're doing here, but also be committed for long term. Don't just be a flash in the pan.
Couldn't you say that just about anything, right?
Of course.
Which is so great about.
But the diet industry would not exist, man.
Good point. But the message is it's so clear to me. It's like whether we're talking about podcasting or being an NFL quarterback or being the best plumber in your community. These are the same things we do. And it's just so many people, they look at someone and they go, oh, look at them. As Paul and I always laugh, they're so lucky. If, look at Jeremy, remember 10 years ago, we saw him, he was the manager of the gym, the late night manager, or whatever it was, but now look at him, look how lucky he is. And what they missed was the last 3,600 days of you every day going, doing, working, failing, getting up again, failing, getting up again, on and on and on. And there's too much focus on, look at Elon Musk or Joe Rogan or Bill Gates or whoever the hottest billionaire is right now. And they're lucky, and they don't want to. No one wants to see the story. No one wants to watch the first 30 years.
Yep. And here's the easy way to put it, Matt, is you're still on dial-up and you're comparing yourself to other people that are on DSL and broadband. You know what I mean? Like I remember we used to wait 10 minutes for a page to load. It's like eventually you're going to get there, man, if you're willing to put in the work every day.
Yeah. And I think that's the message. You're going to get there if you put in the work. And I believe that with all my heart.
Before I ask you the question I like asking everybody, COVID, the last couple of years, if you're excited now, everything's back to normal, and you didn't make any changes the past 2 years, you're not making any changes.
Correct.
And I think that's I mean, that's got to be what, 80% of the population? I'm just throwing a number out there. You think it's higher or lower?
I really don't have a number for you on that. I don't, because I know I can tell you what we did. You know, what we did is we doubled down on like, okay, so there's a lot of people out of work. I can hire people that I couldn't hire before because they worked for somebody else. So we went out and found the most qualified people we could to expand different parts of our company. And then what we did is we started paying our people better. We added more bonuses. We added things like that. And and at the same time, we started documenting our processes. Like, how can we make our processes even better? And that's what we did. So we've come out of this stronger than we were 2 years ago. And I think that's what you need to be looking at, is where's the opportunity in this? There's an opportunity in everything, man, if you're willing to look for it.
Great.
That's awesome. Jeremy, your story's your story. I've enjoyed hearing it. Matt's enjoyed hearing it. Well, now I'm putting words in your mouth, Matt.
I have.
Would you go back and change anything? I always like asking that question.
No, because each one of those things, you know, made me who I am today, right? Like, I honestly, like, the fact that I had to make so many darn phone calls and home visits to sell life insurance is one of the most valuable things I ever learned. You know, I learned about debt amortization and all that kind of stuff as well, because I had to do those things. So I think, to me, like, there's so many things I've learned from each individual thing that I've done. No, I wouldn't change it.
Awesome. So
maybe I would have started earlier, but that's about it.
No, that's valid. That's valid. So where can we find you? Social media, website?
Yeah, so you can find me over at commandyourbrand.com, or if people want to pre-order my new book, which is coming out on June 7th, it's called Unremarkable to Extraordinary. You can get that over at getextraordinarybook.com.
That's awesome. Now we have a reason to have you back on for your book, right? We didn't even get into that today. There's just so much to talk about.
Yeah, well, we touched on a lot of concepts in it. You know, a lot of it is about consistency, hard work, showing up, and, you know, being the same person each and every day, you know, growing, but at the same time showing up every day.
That's awesome. And when will that be out?
June 7th.
June 7th.
We'll definitely have to get that.
Jeremy,
yeah,
I
absolutely, guys.
We enjoyed this conversation so much, and that's just the way we like it, a nice conversation.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, guys. I had a lot of fun today.
Yeah, great meeting you. Thank you.
Same here.
Thanks, Jeremy.